The Sunday morning sun streamed through the stained glass windows of New Hope Baptist Church in Memphis, Tennessee, casting rainbow patterns across the polished wooden pews. Jasmine Taylor sat in her usual spot, third row from the front, right side, her Bible open in her lap, her 7-year-old daughter Ayanna coloring quietly beside her, and her husband Marcus standing at the pulpit delivering the morning sermon. At 38 years old, Jasmine embodied what many in the congregation considered the ideal pastor's wife. She was poised, graceful, always impeccably dressed in modest but elegant clothing that balanced professionalism with approachability. Her natural hair was styled in neat twists, pulled back in a bun, her makeup understated, her smile warm and genuine. She led the women's ministry, organized community outreach programs, and somehow managed to make being a full-time nurse at Methodist Hospital look effortless. "Church," Marcus's voice boomed from the pulpit, commanding attention as it always did. "The Bible tells us in Proverbs that he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. I want you to know that I am a man who has been blessed with favor." His eyes found Jasmine's in the congregation, and she felt her heart swell with the familiar mixture of love and pride. After 12 years of marriage, Marcus still had the power to make her feel seen, cherished, special. "My wife, Jasmine," Marcus continued, gesturing toward her, "is a living example of Proverbs 31, a woman of virtue, a pillar of strength, a partner in ministry. Let's give honor where honor is due." The congregation erupted in applause, and Jasmine felt her cheeks warm with modest embarrassment. She nodded her thanks, squeezing Ayanna's hand as their daughter looked up at her with adoring eyes. This was her life. This was what she'd built with Marcus over 12 years. A marriage rooted in faith, a family grounded in love, a ministry that touched lives throughout Memphis. They were the couple other couples looked to for guidance, the example of what a godly marriage should be. After the service, as Jasmine stood in the fellowship hall helping to set up for the after-church luncheon, she was approached by Sister Nicole Warren. Nicole was relatively new to New Hope. She'd joined about 8 months ago after relocating to Memphis for work. She was in her early 30s, attractive in an understated way, with a quiet demeanor that Jasmine had initially found refreshing after some of the more dramatic personalities in the congregation. "Sister Jasmine," Nicole said, her voice soft and respectful, "I wanted to thank you again for including me in the Women's Ministry Planning Committee. It means so much to feel welcomed here." "Of course, Nicole. You've been such a blessing to our ministry. Your ideas for the youth outreach have been wonderful." Nicole smiled, but something in her expression seemed off. A flicker of discomfort, maybe guilt. But it passed so quickly that Jasmine convinced herself she'd imagined it. "I also wanted to ask," Nicole continued, "if Pastor Marcus mentioned anything about the conference in Nashville next month. He asked me to help coordinate some of the logistics since I have event planning experience, and I wanted to make sure you were okay with me traveling with the ministry team." Jasmine felt a small prick of something, not quite suspicion, but awareness. "He mentioned the conference, but not that you'd be going. But of course, if he needs help with logistics, that makes sense. Marcus always says ministry is a team effort." "Absolutely," Nicole agreed quickly. "Well, I should help with cleanup. Sister Ruth looks like she needs assistance with those tables." As Nicole walked away, Jasmine noticed Marcus across the fellowship hall, deep in conversation with Deacon James and a few other church leaders. He caught her eye and winked, and she felt her momentary unease dissolve. This was Marcus, her husband, her partner, a man of God. Whatever small concern had flickered through her mind was just the enemy trying to plant seeds of doubt in a good marriage. That afternoon, after Ayanna had been dropped off at Jasmine's mother's house for their weekly grandmother-granddaughter time, Jasmine and Marcus relaxed at home. Their house in the Whitehaven neighborhood was modest but comfortable. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, decorated with family photos and scripture verses on the walls. Marcus sat on the couch scrolling through his iPad, while Jasmine prepared sweet tea in the kitchen. Through the archway, she watched him, still handsome at 42, his dark skin glowing with health, his broad shoulders and tall frame giving him a presence that commanded respect, whether he was in the pulpit or in casual clothes at home. "Babe," Jasmine called out. Nicole mentioned the Nashville conference. "I didn't realize she was going with you all." Marcus looked up from his iPad. "Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. She volunteered to help coordinate since she has that background in event planning. It's a 3-day conference. Some of the deacons are going too, and Sister Beverly from the choir. Figured having someone who knows logistics would make everything run smoother." "Makes sense," Jasmine said, bringing 2 glasses of sweet tea into the living room. "When is it exactly?" "Third weekend in June. Friday through Sunday. I know it's Father's Day weekend, but I'll be back Sunday evening. We can do something special with Ayana on Monday." Jasmine settled beside him on the couch. "I was thinking maybe I could come too. Make it a little getaway. My mom could watch Ayana." Something flickered across Marcus's face. So brief she almost missed it. "Babe, you just took those extra shifts at the hospital. You've been working yourself ragged. Use that weekend to rest, pamper yourself, have some Jasmine time. God knows you deserve it." He leaned over and kissed her forehead, and his reasoning made sense. She had been exhausted lately, pulling double shifts to help pay for Ayana's private school tuition and to build their savings. A weekend to herself actually sounded wonderful. "You're right," she agreed, leaning into his embrace. "Maybe I'll get my hair done, catch up on that book club book I've been too tired to read. That's my girl, always taking care of everyone else. Let me take care of ministry for one weekend while you take care of yourself." They spent the rest of the afternoon in comfortable companionship, Marcus working on his sermon notes, Jasmine catching up on laundry and meal prep for the week. This was their rhythm, the pattern they'd established over 12 years. Ministry and marriage, work and worship, partnership and purpose. That evening, as Jasmine was folding clothes in the bedroom, Marcus's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He was in the shower, and normally Jasmine wouldn't have even glanced at it. But the screen lit up with a text message, and her eyes caught the name before she could look away. Nicole Warren. The preview read, "Confirmed the reservation for," and then cut off. Jasmine stared at the phone, her hands stilling over the t-shirt she was folding. It was probably nothing. Nicole was coordinating logistics for the conference. Of course, she'd be texting Marcus about reservations. But something in Jasmine's chest tightened. A feeling she couldn't quite name. Something between intuition and fear. She picked up the phone, her finger hovering over the screen. She could unlock it. She knew Marcus's passcode. They'd never hidden their phones from each other. But doing so felt like a violation of trust. An admission that she suspected something worth investigating. The shower turned off in the bathroom. Jasmine set the phone back down, returned to folding clothes, and pushed the unease deep down where she wouldn't have to examine it. Over the next few weeks, Jasmine tried to ignore the small things that didn't quite add up. Marcus staying late at the church for meetings that sometimes ran until 10 or 11 at night. His phone face down on the table during dinner, something he'd never done before. The way he'd started password protecting his iPad, when it had always been open for anyone in the family to use. And Nicole. Sweet, quiet Nicole who seemed to be everywhere lately. Helping with Wednesday night Bible study. Volunteering for the food pantry on Saturdays. Staying after services to discuss ministry ideas with Marcus in his office. "You're being paranoid," Jasmine told herself repeatedly. This is a woman serving in ministry. Marcus is her pastor. Of course they interact. But the feeling in her gut wouldn't go away. On a Tuesday evening in early June, 2 weeks before the Nashville conference, Jasmine finished her shift at the hospital and decided to surprise Marcus with dinner at the church. He'd mentioned having a late meeting, and she thought bringing him a plate from his favorite barbecue place would be a thoughtful gesture. She arrived at New Hope Baptist at 8:30 p.m., the parking lot nearly empty except for Marcus's black Nissan Altima and one other car she didn't immediately recognize. The church lights were mostly off except for the hallway leading to Marcus's office. Jasmine walked through the familiar corridors, her footsteps echoing on the tile floor. the bag of barbecue warm in her hands. As she approached Marcus's office, she heard voices, Marcus's deep timbre and a woman's softer tones. They were laughing. Jasmine paused, not intentionally eavesdropping, but suddenly reluctant to interrupt. Through the partially open door, she could see Marcus sitting on the edge of his desk, relaxed and smiling, while Nicole stood nearby, closer than Jasmine would have expected, their body language intimate in a way that made Jasmine's breath catch. "You always know how to make me laugh," Marcus was saying, his tone warm and familiar. "That's because you need someone who reminds you not to take everything so seriously," Nicole replied, and there was something in her voice, a teasing quality, an intimacy, that felt wrong. Jasmine pushed open the door fully, and both Marcus and Nicole jumped, their expressions shifting quickly from comfortable ease to surprised guilt. "Jasmine!" Marcus stood up quickly, moving away from Nicole. "Baby, what are you doing here?" "I brought you dinner," Jasmine said slowly, her eyes moving between her husband and Nicole. "I thought you'd be hungry after your meeting." "That's so thoughtful," Marcus said, coming over to kiss her cheek. The gesture felt performative rather than genuine. "We were just wrapping up, weren't we, Sister Nicole?" Yes, Nicole said quickly, grabbing her purse from a chair. "I should get going anyway. Thank you for the ministry guidance, Pastor." "Sister Jasmine, good to see you." She hurried out, and Jasmine heard her footsteps echoing rapidly down the hallway. "What was that about?" Jasmine asked, setting the food bag on Marcus's desk. What was what about? Marcus's tone was casual, but his eyes wouldn't quite meet hers. "The meeting. What were you discussing that had you both laughing so hard?" "Just church business, baby. Nicole had some funny stories about the youth group. You know how it is." He opened the bag, pulling out the barbecue container. "This smells amazing. You're the best wife a man could ask for." The compliment felt like deflection. The kiss felt like performance. And Jasmine's gut was screaming that something was wrong. But she had no proof. Just feelings. Intuition. The sense that the man she'd been married to for 12 years was somehow different. "Marcus," she said carefully, "is everything okay? With us, I mean. You seem distant lately." He looked up from the food, surprise and something else, guilt, flashing across his face. "Distant? Baby, no. I've just been stressed with ministry. You know how demanding it gets, but you and me, we're solid. Always have been, always will be." He pulled her into his arms, and Jasmine let herself be held, breathing in his familiar scent, feeling his strong arms around her. This was her husband, the father of her child, the man who preached faithfulness from the pulpit every Sunday. She was just being paranoid, insecure, letting the enemy plant doubt where there should be trust. "I love you," she said into his chest. "I love you too, Jazz, more than anything." But as Jasmine drove home alone that night, leaving Marcus to finish up some paperwork, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd interrupted something. That the easy intimacy between Marcus and Nicole had been the body language of people who were more than just pastor and church member. She pulled into her driveway and sat in the car for a long moment, staring at their house, the home where she'd built a life, raised a daughter, believed in the sanctity of her marriage. Then she pulled out her phone and did something she'd never done before. She opened the family cell phone account, all their phones were on the same plan, and looked at Marcus's call and text log. The list was extensive, multiple calls and texts every day to a number she didn't recognize. Short calls, usually just a few minutes, but constant, daily, at all hours. Jasmine's hands shook as she copied the number and searched it online. Nothing came up. It was probably a cell phone with privacy settings. She texted the number. "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared immediately, showing someone was typing. Then they stopped. No response came. Jasmine stared at her phone, her heart pounding, her mind racing with possibilities she didn't want to consider. Finally, a text came back. "Wrong number." But Jasmine knew. Somehow she knew. That was Nicole's number, and the frequency of calls and texts between her husband and this church sister was not appropriate for any pastoral relationship. Jasmine sat in her car in her own driveway and felt her perfect life begin to crack. The 2 weeks leading up to the Nashville conference were torture for Jasmine. She tried to act normal, to push down her suspicions, to believe that she was imagining problems where none existed, but the evidence kept mounting in small, undeniable ways. Marcus started taking phone calls in the bathroom with the shower running. He'd close his laptop quickly when she entered a room. He'd begun working out suddenly. Nothing dramatic, but he was paying more attention to his appearance, buying new clothes, getting his beard trimmed more frequently at the barber shop. "You're glowing up, Pastor," Deacon James had joked after church one Sunday. "Better watch out, Sister Jasmine. Your husband's about to have all the church mothers chasing him." Everyone had laughed. Jasmine had laughed too, but inside, her stomach churned. She'd tried confronting Marcus once more, gently bringing up her concerns during a quiet moment at home. "Baby, I feel like we're not connecting lately. Like you're somewhere else even when you're here with me." Marcus had pulled her close, his voice soothing. "Jazz, I'm sorry if I've been distracted. Ministry has been intense, and I know I haven't been as present as I should be. But I promise, after this Nashville conference, I'm taking a step back. More family time, more us time. Okay?" She'd nodded, wanting desperately to believe him. But when his phone buzzed during their conversation, and she saw his eyes flick to it with unmistakable eagerness, she knew his promises were empty. 3 days before the conference, Jasmine made a decision. She called her best friend Tanya, a fellow nurse at Methodist who'd known Jasmine since nursing school and had been in their wedding. "T, I need to talk to you about something. Can you come over after your shift?" "Girl, yes. I've been worried about you. You've seemed off lately." That evening, with Ayanna asleep upstairs and Marcus at another late meeting, Jasmine and Tanya sat in the kitchen over glasses of wine, a rare indulgence for Jasmine, who typically abstained. "I think Marcus is having an affair," Jasmine said, the words feeling both impossible and inevitable as they left her mouth. Tanya's eyes widened. "Jazz, what? Pastor Marcus? Are you sure?" "I'm not sure of anything. That's the problem. I have feelings, suspicions, little pieces that don't quite fit together. But no proof." She told Tanya everything. The late nights, the secretive phone behavior, the intimacy she'd witnessed between Marcus and Nicole, the frequency of calls and texts on their phone bill. Tanya listened carefully, her expression growing more concerned. "Okay, here's what I think. Either you're right and something's going on, or you're experiencing normal insecurity that needs to be addressed in marriage counseling. Either way, you need to know for sure." "How?" "Well," Tanya hesitated, "I'm not usually one to advocate for snooping, but girl, your gut is telling you something. You could wait and hope the truth comes out, or you could look for evidence. Check his phone when he's asleep. Look through his office at church. See if there are receipts or credit card statements that don't add up. That feels wrong, like I don't trust my own husband." "You don't trust your husband," Tanya said gently, "and there's a reason for that, whether it's his behavior or your insecurity. But Jazz, if he is cheating, especially with someone in the church, you need to know. For your health, for Ayanna, for your future." After Tanya left, Jasmine sat alone in her kitchen, wrestling with her conscience. The Bible talked about trust, about believing the best about people, about faith. But it also talked about wisdom, about discernment, about knowing when to be cautious. She made her decision. That night, after Marcus came home and fell asleep, exhausted from his meeting, Jasmine carefully took his phone from the nightstand. Her hands trembled as she entered his passcode, half hoping it wouldn't work, that he'd changed it, and she'd have no choice but to abandon her search. It worked. She crept into the bathroom, locked the door, and began scrolling through his messages. Marcus had been deleting texts. She could see conversation threads with Nicole that showed significant gaps, messages that referenced what you said earlier, without showing what was actually said. But he'd been sloppy. Some texts remained. From Nicole, 3 weeks ago. I can't stop thinking about what happened after Bible study. This is wrong, but it feels so right. Marcus's response: I know. I'm fighting it too. But when I'm with you, everything just makes sense. Jasmine's vision blurred with tears, but she kept reading. From Nicole, 2 weeks ago. How are we going to handle Nashville? Will we have time alone? Marcus's response: I booked us adjoining rooms. We'll figure it out. Adjoining rooms. Jasmine felt like she couldn't breathe. She scrolled further, finding more messages, pieces of conversations that painted a clear picture. This wasn't just an emotional affair. They'd been physically involved, and they were planning to spend the Nashville conference together. She found emails next, confirmations from a hotel in Nashville. 2 rooms reserved under Marcus Taylor and Nicole Warren. Adjoining rooms, as Marcus had promised in his text. Jasmine sat on the bathroom floor, Marcus's phone in her shaking hands, her entire world crumbling around her. The man sleeping in their bed was not the man she'd married. Or maybe he was, and she'd just never seen this side of him. How long had it been going on? How many lies had he told? How many times had he stood in the pulpit preaching about fidelity and righteousness while carrying on an affair? Jasmine felt rage bubbling up alongside her grief. This was betrayal on every level, as a husband, as a father, as a pastor, as a man of God. She took photos of the text messages and emails with her own phone, documenting everything. Then she carefully returned Marcus's phone to the nightstand and went downstairs, unable to lie next to him knowing what she now knew. She sat in the dark living room until dawn, crying quietly, praying desperately, trying to figure out what to do next. By the time Marcus came downstairs at 6 a.m., Jasmine had composed herself. She'd washed her face, made coffee, and put on the mask she'd perfected over 12 years of being a pastor's wife. Calm, collected, supportive. "Morning, baby," Marcus said, kissing the top of her head as he poured coffee. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," Jasmine said truthfully. "Lot on my mind." "Work stuff?" "Something like that." He sat across from her at the kitchen table, looking at his phone while sipping his coffee. Jasmine watched him, this stranger with her husband's face, and marveled at how easily he lied, how naturally deception came to him. "So, the conference is Friday," Marcus said. "I'll head out Thursday evening, get settled in Nashville, be ready for the early sessions Friday morning." "Mm-hmm. You sure you're okay with me missing Father's Day weekend?" "Of course. Ministry first, right?" Jasmine kept her voice light, betraying nothing. Marcus smiled at her, and it was the same smile he'd given her 1,000 times before. But now she saw it differently. Saw the performance, the manipulation, the lie behind every loving gesture. "You're the best wife a man could ask for," he said. Jasmine said nothing, just sipped her coffee and planned her next move. Over the next 2 days, Jasmine operated on autopilot. She went to work, took care of Ayanna, attended Wednesday night Bible study where she sat in the front row and watched Marcus preach about integrity, while Nicole sat 3 rows back, their eyes meeting periodically with unmistakable intimacy. No one else seemed to notice. Or maybe they did and chose to ignore it. Maybe Jasmine wasn't the first to suspect. Maybe there had been whispers she'd been too naive to hear. On Thursday morning, while Marcus was at the church preparing for his trip, Jasmine called in sick to work, something she rarely did. Then she dropped Ayanna at her mother's house under the pretense of having to pick up an extra shift. "You work too hard," her mother said, hugging her goodbye. "Take care of yourself, baby." If her mother noticed the emptiness in Jasmine's eyes, she didn't comment. Jasmine drove to a nearby coffee shop and made a call to the hotel in Nashville, the one where Marcus and Nicole had reservations. "Hi, I need to add my name to my husband's reservation." Marcus Taylor. Checking in tonight? One moment, please. The hotel clerk typed on her keyboard. I see Mr. Taylor has 2 rooms reserved. Yes, for our ministry group. I'd like to be added to his room specifically. The one under his name. Of course, Mrs. Taylor. I've added you to room 412. May I confirm the credit card on file? Jasmine confirmed Marcus's card, her mind racing. Room 412. And Nicole's room would be 414, the adjoining room. After hanging up, Jasmine opened her laptop and booked a flight to Nashville for that evening. She booked her own hotel room at the same hotel, different floor, under her maiden name. She arranged for her mother to keep Ayanna through the weekend, citing a nursing conference she'd forgotten about. She was done being the trusting wife. Done being naive. She was going to catch them, confront them, and end this charade once and for all. Jasmine packed a small bag, choosing her clothes carefully. She wanted to look good, wanted Marcus to see what he was throwing away. But she also dressed practically, knowing the confrontation ahead would require strength more than style. At 5 p.m., Jasmine boarded a flight to Nashville. As the plane took off, she looked out the window at Memphis growing smaller below her and thought about the scripture from Luke. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. The truth was about to come into the light, and Jasmine was going to make sure everyone saw it clearly. Jasmine landed in Nashville at 7:30 p.m. local time, her hands clenched so tightly around her phone that her knuckles ached. The Uber ride from the airport to the hotel felt both endless and too short, part of her desperate to confirm her suspicions, another part wishing she could turn back time to when ignorance had felt like bliss. The hotel was a upscale chain property near the Nashville Convention Center, the kind of place that catered to business travelers and conference attendees. Respectable, professional, the last place you'd expect to find a pastor carrying on an affair. Jasmine checked into her room on the 7th floor using her maiden name, Jasmine Henderson, and the credit card she'd kept separate from their joint accounts. The clerk barely looked at her, just handed over the key cards and gestured toward the elevators. In her room, Jasmine sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out her phone. According to Marcus's texts, which she'd been monitoring through a phone tracking app Tanya had helped her install, he'd arrived about an hour ago. His location showed he was in the hotel. Room 412, 4th floor. Jasmine looked at herself in the mirror. She was still in the clothes she'd worn on the plane. Jeans, a nice blouse, her natural hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked tired, she realized. The past few weeks of stress and suspicion had taken their toll. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her face looked drawn. Get it together, she told her reflection. You didn't come all this way to fall apart now. She freshened her makeup, changed into a dress that Marcus had always loved on her, and steeled herself for what came next. At 9:00 p.m., Jasmine took the elevator down to the 4th floor. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she walked down the carpeted hallway, past door after identical door, until she reached 412. She stood outside for a long moment, listening. Nothing at first, then the sound of the television. Muted voices. Laughter. Laughter. In the room her husband supposedly had to himself. The room adjoining Nicole's. Jasmine pulled out her phone and called Marcus's number. Inside the room, she heard his ringtone. That gospel song he loved. The TV muted. Shuffling sounds. Hey, baby, Marcus answered, his voice casual. Everything okay? Hi, honey. Just wanted to check in. How was the drive? Long, but fine. I'm just settling in, about to review my notes for tomorrow's sessions. Jasmine heard a female voice in the background, quiet, but unmistakable, say something she couldn't make out. Is someone there with you? Jasmine asked, keeping her voice light and curious rather than accusatory. What? No. Just the TV. Watching the news. How's Ayanna? She's fine. At my mom's. Missing you already. I miss her too. And you. But it's just 2 nights, then I'll be home Sunday evening. Right. Sunday evening, After your conference sessions. Exactly. Look, baby, I should probably get some rest. Early start tomorrow. Of course. I love you. A pause, almost imperceptible. Then, love you too. The call ended. Jasmine stood in the hallway, staring at the door of room 412, rage building in her chest like a fire. He'd just lied to her face, told her no one was there, told her he was reviewing notes and getting ready for bed. She raised her hand to knock, then stopped. If she confronted them now, Marcus would just deny it. Say Nicole had stopped by to discuss conference logistics, make her seem crazy and paranoid. No, she needed undeniable proof, something he couldn't explain away. Jasmine went back to her room and waited. She watched the tracking app on her phone, monitoring Marcus's location. At 11 p.m., the location marker for Marcus's phone moved, from room 412 to room 414, Nicole's room, and there it stayed. Jasmine waited until midnight, then 1 a.m., then 2 a.m. Marcus's phone remained in room 414. He wasn't reviewing notes. He wasn't getting rest for an early start. He was with Nicole, in her room, in her bed, breaking every vow he'd made to Jasmine 12 years ago. At 3 a.m., when Jasmine couldn't stand it anymore, she took the elevator back down to the 4th floor. She walked past room 412 to room 414 and pressed her ear against the door. Silence. They were probably asleep. Jasmine returned to her room and cried, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. She cried for the marriage she'd believed in, the man she'd trusted, the life that was crumbling around her. She cried for Ayana, who would have to learn that her father wasn't the man she thought he was. She cried for herself, for the years she'd spent being the perfect pastor's wife, while her husband made a mockery of everything they'd built. When the sun rose Friday morning, Jasmine was done crying. She'd moved past grief into cold, calculated anger. She got dressed, did her makeup carefully, and went downstairs to the hotel restaurant for breakfast. At 8:30 a.m., she saw them. Marcus and Nicole, sitting together in a corner booth, their heads close together, their body language intimate. They weren't touching, too risky in public, but everything about their positioning suggested familiarity, comfort, connection. Jasmine's stomach turned, but she stayed hidden behind a pillar, watching, documenting with her phone camera. She got photos of them laughing together, of the way Marcus's hand lingered near Nicole's on the table, of the looks they exchanged that no pastor and church member should share. Then Marcus's phone rang. Jasmine saw him glance at it, show Nicole the screen, and they both looked concerned. He answered. Hey, Deacon James. What's up? Jasmine couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Marcus's expression change from casual to concerned to guilty. Wait, what? How did she? He stopped mid-sentence, listening. Are you sure? When? Another pause. Okay, I'm on my way. No, don't say anything until I get there. He hung up and said something to Nicole that made her go pale. They both stood quickly, leaving their half-eaten breakfasts, and hurried toward the elevators. Jasmine followed at a distance, her heart racing. Something had happened. Something bad enough to make Marcus abandon his conference and his affair partner. She took the next elevator up, arriving on the 4th floor just in time to see Marcus and Nicole enter room 412. Together, in a rush, their careful facade of propriety abandoned in apparent crisis. Jasmine walked to the door and knocked firmly. Deacon James, we'll handle this, Marcus called from inside. Just give me... He opened the door, expecting someone else, and found his wife standing in the hallway. The color drained from Marcus's face. Behind him, Jasmine could see Nicole frozen in the middle of the room, her eyes wide with shock and fear. Jasmine, Marcus breathed. What are you... How did you... Surprise, Jasmine said, her voice deadly calm. Funny story. I decided to surprise my husband at his ministry conference. You know, be supportive. But imagine my surprise when I found him sharing a room with Sister Nicole. This isn't what it looks like, Marcus started. But Jasmine held up her hand. Don't insult my intelligence by lying to me again. I saw your texts. I saw the hotel reservations. I watched you go into her room last night and not come out until this morning. I saw you having breakfast together like a couple. Nicole made a small sound, somewhere between a sob and a gasp. How long? Jasmine asked, looking directly at her husband. How long have you been sleeping with her while preaching faithfulness from the pulpit? How long have you been lying to me, to our daughter, to our entire congregation? Marcus seemed to deflate, his shoulders slumping. Jazz, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you fell out of love with me? That the pressure of ministry made you vulnerable? That Nicole understands you in ways I don't? Jasmine's voice dripped with sarcasm. Save your explanations for divorce court. I want facts. How long? Marcus looked at the floor. 4 months. 4 months. Jasmine felt like she'd been punched. 4 months. So all those late meetings, all those times you told me you were doing ministry work. Some of it was real work, Marcus said weakly, and some of it was you screwing a church member young enough to be your daughter. Jasmine's voice rose, her composure finally cracking. You stood in that pulpit and preached about sin while living in it. You made me look like a fool in front of our entire congregation. No one knows, Nicole spoke up for the first time, her voice small. We were so careful. I don't care what you think you were, Jasmine rounded on her. You knew he was married, you knew he had a child. You sat in my women's ministry meetings, smiled in my face, and pretended to be my sister in Christ while sleeping with my husband. Nicole started crying, but Jasmine felt no sympathy. Get out, Jasmine said to her. Get out of this room, pack your things, and go back to Memphis. If I see you at New Hope Baptist ever again, I will expose you in front of the entire congregation. Do you understand me? Nicole grabbed her purse and fled, her sobs echoing down the hallway as she ran to her room. Jasmine and Marcus stood facing each other in the hotel room. This space that should have been just for him, that he desecrated with his lies and his affair. Jazz, please, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. I made a terrible mistake. I got caught up in something I should have stopped before it started. But I love you. I love our family. We can get through this. Can we? Jasmine asked, her voice cold. Can we get through you destroying our marriage? Can Ayanna get through learning her father is a hypocrite and a cheater? Can our congregation get through learning their pastor can't live by the principles he preaches? We don't have to tell them, Marcus said desperately. We can keep this private, work through it in counseling, save our marriage and my ministry. Your ministry? Jasmine laughed bitterly. You're more worried about your ministry than your marriage? Than your daughter? Than the woman you vowed before God to love and honor? That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. It's exactly what you meant. Jasmine pulled out her phone and opened the photos she'd taken, the text messages, the emails, the hotel reservation confirmation, the pictures from breakfast this morning. I have evidence, Marcus. Lots of it. And I'm going to use it. Marcus's face went pale. What are you going to do? I'm going to do what you should have done 4 months ago. I'm going to tell the truth. Jasmine's voice was steady now, cold with resolve. I'm going to tell Deacon James and the church board exactly what happened. I'm going to file for divorce. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows that Pastor Marcus Taylor is a fraud who couldn't keep his own house in order while telling others how to live. You'll destroy everything we've built, Marcus said, his voice breaking. You already did that the first time you kissed her. The first time you took her to bed. The first time you chose your ego and your lust over your family. Jasmine moved toward the door. I'm checking out and going home. You can finish your conference or you can come back to Memphis and start damage control. I don't care. But when I get home, I'm telling my mother, I'm telling Tanya, and I'm calling an emergency board meeting for Sunday after service. Jasmine, please don't do this. Think about Ayanna. Think about the church. Think about how this will affect so many people. I am thinking about Ayanna, Jasmine said fiercely. I'm thinking that she deserves better than a father who's a liar and a mother who accepts being disrespected. I'm thinking that she needs to see me stand up for myself, set boundaries, demand better. That's what I'm thinking about. She opened the door, then turned back one final time. And Marcus, you were right about one thing. I did find a church sister, Nicole. Just not the kind of sister I was looking for. Jasmine walked out, leaving Marcus standing alone in the hotel room with his lies exposed and his carefully constructed life falling apart. She checked out of the hotel, took an Uber to the airport, and booked the next flight back to Memphis. On the plane, she finally allowed herself to fully feel the weight of what had happened and what was about to come. Her marriage was over. Her life as a pastor's wife was over. The comfortable routine she'd known for 12 years was shattered. But as painful as the truth was, it was better than living a lie. Better than being made a fool while pretending everything was fine. Jasmine pulled out her phone and called Tanya. Girl, where are you? I've been worried. I'm on a plane from Nashville. I caught them, T. I caught them together. It's all true. Oh, Jazz. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I need you to do something for me. Can you get in touch with Deacon James? Tell him I need to meet with the church board Sunday afternoon. Tell him it's urgent and it's about Marcus. Are you sure you want to do this? Once you tell the board, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. He destroyed our marriage. He doesn't get to keep his ministry too. Not after this. After landing in Memphis, Jasmine went to her mother's house to pick up Ayanna. Her mother took one look at her face and knew something terrible had happened. Baby, what's wrong? Not now, Mama. Can we talk after Ayanna goes to bed? That evening, after tucking Ayanna in with extra hugs and kisses, Jasmine sat with her mother at the kitchen table and told her everything. Her mother cried, for her daughter, for her granddaughter, for the betrayal that had shattered their family. What are you going to do? Her mother asked. I'm going to fight, Mama. Not to save the marriage. That's dead. But I'm going to fight for Ayanna, for our home, for my dignity. And I'm going to make sure Marcus faces consequences for what he's done. That's my girl, her mother said, gripping her hand tightly. You are stronger than you know, and you will get through this. Over the next 24 hours, Jasmine prepared. She organized all her evidence into a clear presentation. She met with a divorce attorney who confirmed she had grounds for a fault-based divorce citing adultery. She reached out to Deacon James and confirmed the emergency board meeting for Sunday afternoon. Marcus came home Saturday evening, looking haggard and desperate. Jasmine had changed the locks. When he knocked on the door, she opened it just enough to speak through the crack. You're not staying here. Jazz, this is my house too. You can't lock me out. Watch me. You can stay at the church with one of the deacons or in a hotel, but you're not sleeping under this roof with me and Ayanna. And if you try to force your way in, I'll call the police and show them the evidence of your affair. Your choice. Marcus looked at her, saw the steel in her eyes, and knew she meant every word. Can I at least see Ayanna? Tomorrow. After church. After you've explained to the board what you've done. You're really going through with it? Exposing everything? You did this, Marcus. Not me. You made the choices that led us here. Now you get to face the consequences. She closed the door and locked it, leaning against it as she heard Marcus's footsteps retreating down the walkway. Sunday morning arrived with cruel beauty. Sunny skies and mild temperatures. The kind of perfect Memphis spring day that usually filled Jasmine with joy. Instead, she dressed Ayanna for church with a heavy heart, knowing this would be one of the last times they'd attend New Hope Baptist as the pastor's family. At church, Jasmine sat in her usual spot, third row from the front, right side. She watched Marcus take the pulpit, looking exhausted, but trying to maintain his pastoral presence. She watched Nicole slip in late, sitting in the back, looking like she hadn't slept. Marcus's sermon was on forgiveness. The irony wasn't lost on anyone who knew the truth. "Church," Marcus said, his voice cracking slightly. "We are all sinners. We all fall short, and we all need grace." Was he really going to do this? Was he going to use the pulpit to set up his own defense before she could expose him? The Bible tells us in James 5:16 to confess our sins to one another and pray for one another. Confession is the first step toward healing. Jasmine felt rage building. He was going to confess publicly, try to control the narrative, paint himself as a repentant sinner seeking forgiveness rather than a calculated adulterer who'd been caught. "I need to confess something to this church," Marcus continued, his voice breaking. "I've sinned. I've failed you as your pastor. I've failed my wife and daughter. I've failed God." The congregation grew silent, everyone leaning forward, sensing something significant was happening. "I've been involved in an inappropriate relationship with a member of this congregation. I've betrayed my vows, my calling, and your trust." Gasps rippled through the sanctuary. Jasmine saw heads turning, whispers starting. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," Marcus said, tears streaming down his face now. "But I'm asking for it anyway. I'm asking for the grace and mercy that Christ showed us on the cross. I'm asking for the opportunity to repent, to make amends, to rebuild what I've broken." He looked directly at Jasmine. "Most importantly, I'm asking my wife to forgive me. Jazz, I'm so sorry. I love you. I want to fix this." The congregation's attention shifted to Jasmine, everyone waiting to see how the pastor's wife would respond to this public confession. Jasmine stood slowly, gathered her purse and Bible, and took Ayana's hand. "Mommy, where are we going?" Ayana whispered. "Home, baby. We're going home." She walked out of the sanctuary with her head held high, ignoring the whispers and stares, leaving Marcus at the pulpit with his confession and his tears. That afternoon, Jasmine met with the church board in the conference room adjacent to Marcus's office. Deacon James, Mother Patricia, Deacon Williams, Sister Henderson, and 3 other board members sat around the table, their faces grave. Jasmine presented everything: the text messages, the emails, the hotel reservations, the photos from Nashville. She laid it all out clinically, without emotion, letting the evidence speak for itself. "How long have you known?" Mother Patricia asked gently. "I suspected for about a month. I confirmed it Thursday night in Nashville." "And the woman involved?" Deacon James asked, though from his expression, Jasmine suspected he already knew. "Nicole Warren." More gasps. Nicole was well-liked, seen as a sweet young woman committed to ministry. "What are you asking from us, Sister Jasmine?" Deacon Williams asked. "I'm asking you to remove Marcus as pastor. He can't preach faithfulness while practicing adultery. He can't counsel marriages while destroying his own. He needs to step down, get help, and face consequences." The board members looked at each other, the weight of the decision heavy on all of them. "We'll need to vote," Deacon James said. "And we'll need to hear from Pastor Marcus." "I've said what I came to say." Jasmine stood. "Whatever you decide, I'm filing for divorce. I'm done being married to a man who doesn't honor his vows. But what you do about his ministry, that's on you." She left them to their deliberations and drove home with Ayana, explaining in simple terms that Mommy and Daddy were going to live separately for a while, that they both still loved her very much, but that sometimes grown-ups made mistakes that changed things. Ayana cried, and Jasmine held her, her own tears falling silently as she comforted her daughter through the pain Marcus's choices had caused. 6 months had passed since that devastating Sunday, and Jasmine's life looked completely different from the one she'd carefully constructed as a pastor's wife. She stood in her new apartment, a 2-bedroom in a different part of Memphis, modest but entirely hers, packing Ayana's school lunch for the next day and marveling at how much had changed. The church board had voted unanimously to remove Marcus as pastor. He'd been given the option to resign quietly or be formally terminated. He'd chosen resignation, releasing a statement about personal failures and needing time for spiritual restoration. Nicole had left New Hope Baptist immediately, moving back to Atlanta where her family lived. The congregation had been shocked, divided, and ultimately supportive, at least of Jasmine. Many members had reached out with love and encouragement. Some had shared that they'd suspected something, but hadn't wanted to believe it. A few had blamed Jasmine, suggesting she must have driven Marcus to stray. But those voices were thankfully few and far between. The divorce had been finalized just last month. Jasmine had gotten the house, or rather, the equity from selling it, which she'd used to pay off debts and establish herself in this new apartment. Marcus had been ordered to pay child support, and had been granted supervised visitation with Ayanna every other weekend. He was living with his brother and working at a community center, no longer in ministry, his reputation damaged beyond repair in Memphis church circles. Jasmine had quit the women's ministry, left New Hope Baptist, and found a new church home. A smaller congregation where she was just Jasmine, not Sister First Lady, where she could heal and grow without the weight of being a pastor's wife. Her job at the hospital had been a lifeline. Her colleagues had rallied around her, and nursing, always her passion, had given her purpose and identity beyond her marriage. She'd even taken on extra shifts, using work as therapy and building her savings account with the security she'd never had when Marcus controlled the finances. Tonight was special. Tanya was coming over, and they were having their weekly dinner and wine night, a tradition they'd started in the aftermath of the divorce to make sure Jasmine didn't isolate herself. The doorbell rang at 7 sharp. Tanya entered carrying bags from their favorite Thai restaurant and a bottle of wine. "Girl, you look good," Tanya said, hugging Jasmine tightly. Like, genuinely happy good, not fake smile good. "I feel good," Jasmine admitted, surprised by the truth of it. "Not every day. Some days I still hurt, but most days I feel free." They settled on the couch with their food, and Tanya shared updates about her own life and hospital gossip. Then, carefully, she broached the topic she'd been avoiding. "Have you heard about Marcus and Nicole?" Jasmine's stomach tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "No." "What?" "They're not together. Apparently, once the affair was out in the open and he lost his ministry, things fell apart between them. Nicole wanted him to move to Atlanta, start over there. He refused. They fought about who was more to blame for getting caught. Last I heard, they're not even speaking." Jasmine absorbed this information, waiting to feel satisfaction or vindication. Instead, she just felt sad. Sad that so much had been destroyed for an affair that hadn't even lasted. "How do you feel about that?" Tanya asked. "Honestly, I feel nothing. Neither of them matter to me anymore. Marcus is Ayanna's father, and I have to co-parent with him, but beyond that, he's just someone I used to know." "That's growth, girl. 6 months ago you would have been devastated hearing about them. 6 months ago I still thought I could fix it. That if I just prayed hard enough, tried hard enough, loved him better, he'd change." Jasmine shook her head. "But you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. And you can't save a marriage when only one person is fighting for it." They ate in comfortable silence for a moment before Tanya spoke again. "I have to tell you something. I've been holding back because I wasn't sure if you were ready." "What?" "There's a new doctor at the hospital. Dr. Cameron Ellis, pediatric surgeon. He's asked about you, like multiple times." Jasmine laughed. I am not ready to date, not even close." I know, but hear me out. He's not asking you out. He's just interested, respectful. Asked if you were okay after he heard what happened. Said he admired how you handled everything with grace. How does he know what happened? Girl, everyone at the hospital knows. You think hospital gossip moves slow? But the point is, he's noticed you. And he's a good man. Divorced himself, has 2 kids, understands complicated situations. I'm not saying you should date him. I'm just saying when you're ready, there are good men out there. Marcus wasn't the only one. Jasmine considered this. The idea of dating, of trusting another man, of opening herself up to potential hurt again, It all felt overwhelming, but it also felt like possibility, like there might be a future beyond the pain of her past. "I'll think about it," she said, "but not now. Right now I need to focus on me and Ayana, on healing and rebuilding." "That's fair," Tanya agreed. "Just promise me you won't close yourself off completely. You deserve love, Jazz. Real love. The kind that honors you." After Tanya left, Jasmine checked on Ayana, who was sleeping peacefully in her new bedroom. Her daughter had adjusted better than Jasmine had expected. Kids were resilient in ways adults weren't. She'd had some rough moments, some tears about missing Daddy, some confusion about why they'd moved. But she was thriving in her new school, had made new friends, and seemed to understand that Mommy was happier now, even if their family looked different. Jasmine sat in her small living room, looking around at the space she'd created for herself and her daughter. It wasn't fancy. The furniture was a mix of affordable pieces from Target and items her mother had given her. But it was hers. Every choice, every decoration, every detail reflected her taste, her values, her life. On the wall, she'd hung a new piece of art, a framed print with a quote from Maya Angelou. "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." Jasmine had been through hell. Her marriage had imploded publicly. Her identity as a pastor's wife had been stripped away. Her dreams of growing old with Marcus, of being an example of a godly marriage, had been shattered. But she hadn't been reduced. If anything, she'd been refined, strengthened, clarified. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Jasmine. This is Dr. Ellis from Methodist. I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I wanted to see if you'd be interested in grabbing coffee sometime. Just coffee as friends, no pressure. Your friend Tanya gave me your number and said you might appreciate the company of someone who understands messy divorces. No worries if you're not interested." Jasmine stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. 6 months ago, she would have immediately declined. She wasn't ready. She was too hurt. She needed more time. But maybe Tanya was right. Maybe closing herself off completely wasn't the answer. Maybe friendship with someone who understood her situation, who'd been through similar pain, could be part of healing rather than a betrayal of it. She typed, "Coffee sounds nice. How about Saturday afternoon? There's a good place near the hospital." His response came quickly. "Perfect. Looking forward to it. And just to be clear, I'm not looking to rush into anything either. Just thought 2 survivors of divorce might enjoy commiserating over good coffee." Jasmine smiled. No pressure. No expectations. Just possibility. The following Saturday, Jasmine met Dr. Cameron Ellis at the coffee shop. He was tall, dark-skinned, with kind eyes and an easy smile. They talked for 2 hours about everything. Their divorces, their kids, their work, their hopes for the future. It was comfortable, natural, refreshing. "Can I be honest with you?" Cameron asked as they walked back to their cars. "I've been through a lot. Divorce, co-parenting challenges, trust issues. And I'm not looking for anything complicated right now." "Good. Neither am I. But I would like to see you again, as friends. Maybe with our kids sometime. I think Ayana and my daughter Zoe would get along. They're around the same age." "I'd like that," Jasmine said, meaning it. Over the following months, Jasmine and Cameron developed a genuine friendship. They had coffee regularly, attended some hospital events together as colleagues, and eventually arranged playdates for their daughters. There was no pressure, no romance, just 2 people who'd been through similar trauma finding comfort and shared understanding. Meanwhile, Jasmine continued building her new life. She'd started a blog about surviving divorce and rebuilding after betrayal, writing under a pseudonym to protect Ayana's privacy. The blog had gained a surprising following, other women going through similar situations finding solace and strength in Jasmine's honest reflections. She'd also started therapy, working through the betrayal trauma, the loss of identity, the complicated feelings about faith and church that Marcus's actions had triggered. Her therapist had helped her understand that she hadn't failed, Marcus had, that his choices reflected his character, not her inadequacy. 1 year after that devastating Sunday when Marcus had confessed from the pulpit, Jasmine threw a small party at her apartment. Not to celebrate the divorce, that still hurt, still carried loss, but to celebrate survival, growth, the year she'd made it through. Tanya was there, along with Jasmine's mother, her sister, and a few close friends from work. Cameron and his daughters came too, bringing flowers and a cake. "I want to make a toast," Jasmine's mother said, raising her glass of sparkling cider. "To my daughter, who has shown more strength and grace this year than anyone should have to. Who fell apart and put herself back together. Who chose truth over comfort, dignity over denial, and healing over bitterness. Baby, I am so proud of you." Everyone raised their glasses, and Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes. But they were good tears, grateful tears. "Thank you all for being here," Jasmine said. "For supporting me, for believing in me, for reminding me that I was more than Marcus's wife, more than my pain, more than my circumstances. This year has been the hardest of my life. But it's also been transformative. I've learned who I am outside of my marriage. I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought. And I've learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you opens the door to better things than you imagined." She looked at Cameron, who smiled warmly, but without presumption. They'd talked about the possibility of their friendship becoming more, but both had agreed to take things very, very slowly. For now, friendship was enough. Possibility was enough. That night, after everyone had left and Ayanna was asleep, Jasmine sat on her balcony looking out at the Memphis skyline. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "I heard about your party. I'm glad you're doing well. I know I don't deserve to say this, but I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved so much better than I gave you." Jasmine read the message twice, considering her response. A year ago she would have had so much to say, so much anger and hurt to express. Now, she simply typed, "Thank you for saying that. I hope you're finding your way too. For Ayanna's sake, I hope you're becoming a better man." She didn't wait for his response. She closed the message, set down her phone, and looked up at the stars. Somewhere in her journey through betrayal and divorce, Jasmine had found something unexpected. Herself. Not the pastor's wife version. Not the people-pleasing, perfect image-maintaining version. The real Jasmine. Flawed, strong, complicated, resilient. She'd been through fire and emerged not destroyed but refined. She'd lost a marriage, but gained self-respect. She'd been publicly humiliated, but had handled it with grace that inspired others. And most importantly, she'd shown her daughter that when someone betrays your trust, disrespects your worth, and breaks their promises, you don't have to stay. You don't have to accept being treated as less than you are. You can choose yourself. You can walk away. You can rebuild. That was the legacy Jasmine wanted to leave Ayanna. Not the cautionary tale of a pastor's cheating husband, but the inspiring story of a mother who refused to settle for less than she deserved. 2 years after the divorce, Jasmine was thriving. She'd been promoted to charge nurse at the hospital. Her blog had grown so popular that a publisher had reached out about turning it into a book. She'd started speaking at women's conferences about surviving betrayal and rebuilding self-worth. And Cameron, patient, kind, understanding Cameron, had gradually transitioned from friend to something more. They'd been officially dating for 6 months, taking it slow, being intentional, making sure both their daughters were comfortable with the relationship. There was no rush, no pressure, just 2 people who'd been broken by previous relationships taking their time to build something healthy and whole. Marcus had moved to Atlanta, finally, starting over at a much smaller church as an associate pastor under heavy accountability. He saw Ayanna once a month, their relationship slowly rebuilding on a foundation of honesty, rather than the pedestal she'd once placed him on. He'd apologized multiple times, gone to therapy, and seemed genuinely committed to becoming a better man. Jasmine had forgiven him, not for his sake, but for her own peace. Nicole had gotten engaged to someone in Atlanta, moved on with her life. Occasionally, Jasmine wondered if Nicole felt guilt or shame, if she'd learned anything from the devastation their choices had caused. But mostly, Jasmine didn't think about her at all. On a warm spring evening, exactly 3 years after that Sunday when Marcus had confessed from the pulpit, Jasmine sat in her apartment, the same apartment she'd moved into after the divorce, though she'd redecorated significantly, and worked on the final chapter of her book. The last chapter was titled, "Rising from the Ashes, When the Worst Thing Becomes the Best Thing." She wrote, "I won't lie and say I'm grateful for the betrayal. I'm not. I'm grateful for what I learned from surviving it. I learned that I am not defined by my marital status or my husband's choices. I learned that dignity is keeping your composure even when your world is falling apart. I learned that sometimes God's protection looks like closed doors and destroyed plans. I learned that the life you imagine isn't always better than the life waiting for you on the other side of tragedy. When I saw my name and Nicole's on that hotel bill, when I realized my husband had been lying to me for months, I thought my life was over. In many ways, it was. The life I'd known, the identity I'd claimed, the future I'd planned. All of it died that weekend in Nashville. But from those ashes, something new grew. A stronger me, a wiser me, a me who knows her worth and refuses to accept less. If you're reading this while going through your own betrayal, know this: you will survive. You will heal. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the worst thing that happened to you broke you open so better things could grow in the cracks. Jasmine saved the document and closed her laptop. Through her window, she could hear Ayanna laughing in her room, probably on FaceTime with one of her friends. Her daughter was happy. Jasmine was happy. And that had seemed impossible 3 years ago when her world was collapsing. She'd been tested by fire. She'd been broken. She'd been betrayed by the person who vowed to honor her. But she hadn't been defeated. Jasmine Green, no longer Taylor, no longer defined by her marriage or her ex-husband's ministry, had risen from the ashes of her old life and built something beautiful from the ruins. And that was a testimony more powerful than any sermon Marcus had ever preached.